Salvete discipuli, hodie spectatis lecturam sextam capitis viginti sex. Comparison of adjectives, ablative of comparison. Hodie discemus. Primum vocabula capitis viginti sex. Deinde grammaticam capitis. Comparative adjectives, superlative adjectives, ablative of comparison. Primum discemus verba vocabulorum capitis viginti sex. In hoc capite est unum verbum, invito. Primum et ultimum verbum, invito, invitare, invitavi, invitatum. Ad caenam invitamini, bene canabitis. Quid significat invicto? Nunc discemus nomina vocabulorum capitis viginti sex. In hoc capite sunt octo nomina: caena, forum, lex, limen, lux, mensa, nox, somnus. Primum nomen: caena, caenae. Ad caenam invitamini, bene canabitis. Quid significat caena? Proximum nomen: forum, fori. Ecce forum Romanum. Ecce forum Romanum. Proximum nomen: lex, legis. In constitutione civitatum foederatarum scriptum est: leges a senatu ferendas esse. Quid significat lex? Ecce legislatores senatus civitatum foederatarum, qui leges ferunt. Quid significat lex? Proximum nomen: limen, liminis. Janus est deus omnium liminum, et inter locos et inter tempora, a quo mensis Januarius nomine suo traxit. Quid significat limen? Proximum nomen: lux, lucis. Deus dixit: lucem faciendum est, et lux facta est. Quid significat lux? Proximum nomen: mensa, mensae. Ecce mensa, mensa. Quid significat? Proximum nomen: nox, noctis. Noctibus claris, caelum stellarum plenum est. Quid significat nox? Ecce caelum nocte, in quo plurimae stellae sunt. Quid significat nox? Ultimum nomen: somnus, somni. Femina dormit, femina est in somno. Quid significat somnus? Nunc discemus adjectiva vocabulorum capitis viginti sex. In hoc capite sunt quinque adjectiva: pudicus, superbus, tristis, turpis, urbanus. Primum adjectivum: pudicus, pudica, pudicum. viri Romani putabat feminas in vesta et moribus verbisque pudicas esse debere. Quid significat pudicus? Ecce femina Romana, quae in vesta pudica est. Quid significat adjectivum? Proximum adjectivum. Superbus, superba, superbum. Rex ultimus a Romanis superbus appellatus est, qui se nimium dilexit, et ut tyrannus rexit. Quid significat superbus? Proximum adjectivum. Tristis, trista. Bartholomeus tristissimus est. Quid significat tristis? Proximum adjectivum. Turpis, turpe. In fabula legimus turpem anaticulam in bellissimum cignum verti. Quid significat turpis? Ecce turpis anaticula, ecce bellissimus cignus. Quid significat turpis? Ultimum adjectivum. Urbanus, urbana, urbanum. Regiones urbanae hac in civitate sunt in parte orientali, rusticae in parte occidentali. Ecce civitas Massachusetts. Ecce pars orientalis quae est urbana, circam urbem bostoniensem. Ecce pars occidentalis civitatis Massachusetts, quae est rustica. Quid significat urbanus? Okay, so in this chapter, we are learning degrees of adjectives. What does that mean? Well, let's look at how it works in English. So, in most languages, at least in English and Latin, adjectives have 3 degrees. And so far, we have only been working with adjectives in the positive degree. Okay, so sad, ugly, elegant, just describing something as some quality, right? Well, you may know that in English, we can also add suffixes to adjectives in order to increase the degree of something, in order to intensify them, okay, or to use them for comparison. So for sad, we can say sadder, or more to express more sad, okay, or uglier, to express more ugly. Or if you have 3 syllables or more in an English adjective, you don't add the er suffix, you add the adverb more in front of the adjective, so more elegant. Okay, so this is what's called the comparative degree, right? So usually when you use this, you are using it in comparison to something else. So I am sadder than you today, okay? Or this piece of art is uglier than this piece of art, etc. Also, we have the superlative degree, okay, in which either, if it's a 1 or 2 syllable adjective in English, we add the est suffix to express the most something. Or if it has more than 3 syllables, 3 or more syllables, we put most in front of the of it. Okay, so in English, a superlative adjective is the most something. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward, I hope. So how does it work in Latin? Okay, well, note that any adjective in Latin, just like any adjective in Latin, regardless of how many syllables is in it, will use suffixes when you put them into the comparative and superlative degree. Okay, so what we have here are 3 adjectives that we learned in this chapter: tristis, meaning sad; torpus, meaning ugly or shameful; and urbanus, meaning urban or pertaining to the city, or urbane, like city-like manners, right? So notice that these are third declension adjectives. These are third declension adjectives, and this is a 2-1-2 adjective. Now, let's go from sad, ugly, and elegant, okay, to sadder, uglier, and more elegant, okay? Well, you'll notice that regardless of whether the positive degree of the adjective is a third declension or a 2-1-2, the comparative form of the adjective, the suffix will be the same. It'll be ior, ius, okay? So all comparative adjectives, the comparative degree of all adjectives will be essentially a two-ending third declension adjective where the masculine and feminine will be tristior and the neuter will be tristius in the singular. And notice that even urbanus, which is a 2-1-2 adjective, in the comparative degree switches to using a third declension suffix urbanior. So tristior, sadder, turpior, uglier, urbanior, more elegant. Okay? Now let's switch to the superlative degree. Okay? Tristissimus aum, turpissimus aum, urbanissimus aum. You'll notice that regardless of the declension of the positive degree, a superlative adjective will always be a 2-1-2 adjective because the suffix that it acquires, this issimus aum, is always a 2-1-2, has 2-1-2 endings. Okay, so tristissimus means saddest, but it can also mean very sad or super sad, right? So it's not always the most of something, can just express something being very something. Okay, torpissimus aum, okay, very ugly, very shameful, or most shameful, super shameful. Urbanissimus aum, okay, very elegant, very urbane, etc., or most elegant. Okay, so basically just add the issimus ending to the stem of any adjective for the most part to make it superlative. So you know the 2-1-2 endings, I hope, at this point, so we don't really have to work on declining these. But let's work on the comparatives because the third declension is still more recently new with all of its variations. So let's decline in the singular a comparative adjective. Okay, so let's first off review declining a third declension adjective in the positive degree. Okay, so torpus torpa, a typical third declension two-ending adjective, will decline as follows. Remember that they decline as an I stem and they have the long I in the ablative. Okay, well, comparative adjectives do not decline as I stems. When you put an adjective in the comparative degree, it actually declines as a regular third, like a regular third declension noun does, meaning that the ablative singular is actually a short e, just like a regular third declension noun. Okay, but as you see here, otherwise it declines in the third declension. So for masculine and feminine, torpior, torpioris, torpiori, torpiorum, torpiora. Okay, and then for the neuter. Okay, notice that the neuter singular nominative is torpius, okay, which of course means it will also be that in the accusative, but otherwise, like the third declension, the genitive, dative, and ablative are the same as in the masculine feminine. Okay. What about in the plural? Okay, again, in the positive degree, third declension adjectives decline as I stems. Hence, you'll have the eum in the genitive plural, okay? But in the comparative degree, they do not decline as I stems. So it'll be turpiorum, okay? So just the ending, okay? But otherwise, it will look the same. And ooh, what did I just do there? Mea culpa. That should be like that, okay? All right. And again, with superlative adjectives, just add issimus aum to the stem to express most something or very something or super something. Okay. One construction that you might see with the superlative adjective is adding the adverb quam in front of any superlative adjective. Okay, meaning as X as possible. Right? So if I say quam torpissimus, I mean as ugly as possible. Okay? If I say quam tristissimus, it's as sad as possible. Okay? quam urbanissimus, okay, as urbane, as elegant as possible, okay? So hopefully that's just rearranging some already familiar elements to add a bit more spice to describing things. Give it a try, and I'll see you next time. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. But wait, there's more. My bad. There's one more thing we're learning in this chapter. Comparative constructions, okay? There are two ways that you can make comparisons in Latin, okay? And which involve using comparative adjectives, okay? One is just using the conjunction quam, okay? So let's look at these first two sentences. Romani fortiores quam aliae gentes erant, okay? The Romans were braver, okay, than, or stronger, or more valiant than other peoples, than other nations, okay? So I'm using fortiores here as a comparative form of fortis forta, okay, and I'm putting it into the nominative plural, okay, because it's the predicate of erant here, and I'm basically saying they were stronger than other nations. And then so what's on the other side of the quam will also be nominative, okay, because essentially it is sort of another predicate, okay. This also works in indirect speech. So Romani credebant se fortiores quam alias gentes esse. So the Romans were believing that they themselves were stronger than other nations, okay? So because this is put in indirect speech, this predicate construction will be put into the accusative. Therefore, with the quam for the comparison, the other predicate will also be accusative, okay? So that's one way to do comparative constructions, okay, with a quam. There's another way, with the ablative of comparison. And you can write this sentence the same way with an ablative, the same sentence with an ablative of comparison with the same meaning. So, Romani fortiores aliis gentibus erant. Okay, the Romans were stronger than other nations. Okay, so here we have a comparative adjective in play, and we have a noun in the ablative, okay, with it, that expresses the thing being compared against. Okay, so we translate it as than, just as we translate the quam as than. Okay, so if you see a comparative adjective in the neighborhood and something in the ablative, okay, you might translate it as than. Okay, and of course this also works in indirect speech. Romani credebant se fortiores aliis gentibus esse. Okay, the Romans were believing, or used to believe, were in the habit of believing, that they themselves were stronger than other nations, okay? So in indirect speech, we're still using the ablative of comparison. You don't have to worry about, keeping this stuff consistent. Now, what is the kind of the rules for usage? Well, again, you can use it in either, but usually the ablative comparison is preferred when the comparative adjective is nominative or accusative. So technically, this is the more proper way to write this sentence than this, even though this is perfectly valid. Okay, but again, it's a matter of preference rather than of correctness or incorrectness. So just get in the habit of doing it both ways. Okay, so that's actually it, and give it a shot, and I'll see you next time. Quale te discipuli?